Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And today we have a really exciting topic that is going to be change management. Tell me, who doesn't like to talk about change management? All of us do, right? No, nobody wants change. Nobody wants to talk about change, but we are going to talk deeply about change management. We are going to look at the mechanics of how to enable change management inside the organization. If you are joining for the first time, we meet every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and we talk about one topic related to digital transformation. And we are always going to have a very exciting panel, and they are going to share their insights. So we are going to start with everybody's intro first. Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sam. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sam, for having me back. I think this is my third one, although I'm not counting. I'm Amanda Prochaska. I am the co-founder of Wonder Services. I spent 16 years in supply chain, leading a lot of large-scale transformations, whether it was digital or M&A activity or insourcing, outsourcing. So change runs through me like it's like part of my DNA. And the reason why I love this topic, Sam, is because I've done it well and I've done it horribly. So, and I think a lot of us might be in that same boat, but thank you for having me here. I cannot wait to help have this conversation today and provide my insights.
I like two things about you, Amanda. Number one, you are super passionate about change that everybody can notice. And the second thing is that you are being honest. You are not saying that you were 100% successful with change. A lot of people claim that.
No, sometimes we learn the hard way.
Yep. Okay, Laura, so I'm going to actually move to you next. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. I am a lot like Amanda. I like change too. I think more than anything, we've been keen observers of human behavior in change environments. It's just fascinating to see how people react to change and what are the ways that we can help them find their way through it and be more effective with it. And to the point of making mistakes, I mean, the other thing that we have worked really hard at is just being listeners and, in recognizing when we are making errors or maybe our best ideas just in application didn't work as well as we anticipated. And storytellers. So, all in all, we design processes that organizations can use for their leaders and employees to really get in the front seat, rather than the back seat or, in the front seat with the brakes on. So I'm excited to have the conversation and to learn from everyone.
Yeah, and I am super excited to have you because when we talk about topics like change management, everybody sort of claims that, they can talk about change management. But there are going to be some professionals who are living this life on a daily basis. And I wanted to make sure that we have only those professionals in this forum. And that's why, Laura, I am super excited to have you, that you are living this life on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, next, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Melissa Drew. I'm currently working with IBM. I have been in procurement and supply chain for 27 years. And really, my job is focused on that digital transformation, large, complex digital transformations with organizations that have these really measurable results so that not only they can increase their revenue and market share, but they can really stay in front of and change as our global landscape constantly changes. And so for me, my experience is there's no transformation without change.
Yeah, could not agree more with you. I think you are living this life as well in terms of those large transformation. And that's where I think the real need for change management is going to be. I am not saying that small to medium-sized businesses don't require change. They also they have different set of problems. The bigger customers are going to have very different sort of problems. So I am very excited to have you all. So let's dig right into the topic. And the first question that I'm going to ask is, okay, let's say, obviously there is a lot of conversation, buzz around change management, how important change management is everybody sort of talks about it. I don't know how many SMB, and I really like to emphasize on those customers because they are the ones who are probably not going to know why change management is really critical and really important when they are going through their transformation journey. So let's say, Amanda, if I start with you, and these customers are sort of looking at the ERP implementation, the digital transformation implementation, and they sort of jump right into the product. They simply want to get a quote from me and sign it and then just move with the product, and how that goes if you follow that process, right? You have been there. So tell us why change management is critical and why it is important especially for SMB customers.
Yeah, so I always like to use the example of a hammer because everyone has used a hammer before. Like a hammer is good to create, hammer in a nail into a wall. So if you can relate a hammer to technology, if you have no one using that hammer, what is it good for? Right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, what change management is all about is you're making investments in these wonderful digital technologies, whether it's ERP or something else, and you're promising an ROI on that investment typically. How do you maximize that ROI? How do you even get to the ROI? Is through proper change management. You need to have business readiness and a people first focus to make sure that the people know how to use that hammer appropriately. You don't want them walking around hammering holes in the wall. You don't also want them trying to hammer a screw into the wall. They need to know how to use it and use it well for you to actually get the ROI from that particular investment. Now, here's the other thing that I would like to chime in on. We also shouldn't tell people what to do, okay? And because here's what that creates. If you tell someone in your organization, go do X, Y, and Z every single day, or go do this because you have no other choice, what happens is that you get what I call a compliant culture. They're just waiting for the next thing to be told to them. They're not being innovative. They're being passive or reactive because they have now been trained. I'm just waiting for my leadership to dictate me the next steps. That is not what you want to achieve through a digital transformation. Through proper change management and putting people first, you can actually engage them in the process that allows for their interactive nature to come out, their creativity to come out, and their innovation to come out. And you actually can, through, again, great change management, leave your culture in a better spot than what you came in with. So often we actually do the total opposite. We leave our culture in shambles, but we have now this nice digital tool. So those are the two things that I look at is why change management is so needed. And in whether it's digital transformation, an org change, M&A, it should be at the forefront of anything that we do.
Okay, some amazing insights there. I love that hammer story and your comment about the compliance culture. That is always going to be super critical. And Laura, you are going to have comment there, so go ahead, please.
Just a comment. Compliance is one thing. I think there's also another thing that can be stirred up in that. Here's what you do, and that's resistance. A lot of people that are sort of pushed hard into doing something without really being engaged and, help having, like I said, really giving them the tools to find their way through that process. There's this unconscious resistance. So, I mean, these folks wouldn't wake up in the morning and go, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to resist that technology and I'm going to talk really bad about it. And I'm going to bash it in front of, people. And they don't say they're going to do that. But unconsciously they are because they have really been backed into a corner. So I think both can have a lot of really negative effects on ultimately adoption.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa. I think you had a comment. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo, the critical factors of why. Change evolves. So as consulting evolves, as organizational evolves, think of change as every 2 years I need to go and clean out my closet. Every 2 years, how I design, how I live, how I clothe myself, all of that changes. So every 2 years I go in and I change my closet. That's part of what change management is. It's recognizing that your company is changing, the demands of the company is changing, the demands of the users and what they're doing on a daily basis changes every 2 years. How you influence your internal and external customers. Change is about the influence of changing the behavior of an individual. Going back to what Amanda said, it's not about telling individuals what to do, it's influencing that behavior.
Go ahead, Laura.
I think it's a really important piece to talk about, that it's an iterative process, right? So you can really call out your vision and here's why we're doing this and here's the value of it. And then as you noted, Amanda, put people first for certain, but I think it's critical up front to say that this is an iterative process. We're going to have to change this dynamically along the way. Because one of the things that we've heard is like, well, wait a minute, this is what was said 6 months ago. Why is this changing? Well, if we give and establish the expectation that it is dynamic and we are going to have to change throughout the process because there are so many moving parts, especially now, that enables people to not go into yet another level of resistance when we do have to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, guys, so some very amazing insights here. And one of the comment that I am going to make is going to be related to use of buzzwords. And Amanda, you talk about this a lot. But, this happens in every single profession, including change management. Okay.
Yes.
So when I'm talking to you, and if I'm acting my manufacturing executive, and you guys are talking a lot of technical terms, even though they may not be technically technical. Okay, but you guys are talking about change management. You guys are talking about compliance culture. You guys are talking about a lot of resistance. I get it. But let's say if I'm the executive, I'm still not sure if I follow, let's say if I'm running a manufacturing company. So where is change going to be applicable for me? Is it going to be when I am considering a digital initiative? Is it more of a project management term? What exactly is change management as far as I am concerned? Can you provide a story that will paint a picture for me, Amanda? And Amanda, I'm asking you, okay? Can you provide a story so that I know when I should be using change management as a process in my organization?
Okay. Ooh, I'm going to start out with a statement while I'm thinking of a story. Okay. So, so to me, Sam, it's all about authentic leadership. Change management should be in any leader's toolbox right now on how do you lead your team to the next level. So like I say, you can use it on digital transformation, organizational change. Strategy changes require change management to get people aligned. Different incentives, like are you changing pay plans, compensation? That change can come into all of that. So typically when I see my engagements, I will work with leaders to help them and be an advisor to them about how to lead change. And there's all kinds of different tools to be able to do that. Now, I'll give you an example of what not to do, Sam, okay? So a lot of leaders, particularly in the procurement space, and Melissa, you'll get a kick out of this, when the large P2P digital transformations were going on, you would walk into the door and the leader would be saying stuff like, this product so-and-so is Amazon-like. It's just going to be like using Amazon, and it's going to solve all of your problems. You are not going to have to do any transactional work at all, and it's all going to be strategic. And it's like this extreme conversation. It was almost like they were solving world hunger with a P2P technology. And what happens in that case if a leader is not trained and does not have that advisor that comes in to help them with change management, they don't realize how divisive that language can be, because two things happen. One, people believe them. I'm right there with you, Melissa. I hear you as a leader. I'm going to follow you until the cows come home. I believe 100% this. And then what happens at the end is that they're disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
The other people resist out of the very beginning. They're like, oh, I've heard this from leaders before. I don't buy it. And therefore, I'm going to do kind of that passive resistance, as Laura was saying. So as an example, what we start out with really upfront is, what is that authentic story that we can be telling the people first? What is that real life reality? What are they going to be concerned with about this change? What voids are being created because of this change? And let's talk about it. As a leader, let's have those conversations with our people to inspire them to come along with the change, to influence them to come along with the change. And that's so often, if I can tell that story, Sam, that so often was what we see in as a leader. You feel such pressure to promise these big promises, but it actually is doing you a disservice when it comes to change and leading your people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, amazing. So I'm actually going to move to you, Laura, next, in terms of any stories that you might have. So let's say if I'm the leader in the manufacturing organization and I am looking at, okay, my change management team is saying that, you know what, I am actually going to save your ERP implementation or the digital, transformation implementation. But for me, if I talk to, let's say, the technical team or the functional team, they are saying that you are going to be okay. Change management team is saying that, you are going to be okay. So I need to make a decision here. The only thing I'm really getting is, it's some sort of framework, but I don't even know what does the framework really entail when it comes to identifying, okay, where am I going to incorporate change management in my processes, where it is going to be important, and how to sort of execute on the framework. So do you have any specific story in terms of where change management is going to be applicable and how to execute it?
Well, let me just throw out some comments on in kind of tying up, what you brought up is that, number one, these leaders can have a multitude of change projects that they are a part of, right? I mean, I had someone the other day that said that they were in the midst of 28, right? And so Amanda, I think it's critical to have that relationship with that leader and really help them recognize how to communicate and continue to communicate about that project. But the truth is they may have 28 other projects and so many hours in the day. So a lot of times they've gone through this decision-making process. They see the value proposition of that technology. They're ready to bring it in, but they've got 28 other projects. So they're like, rock on, Amanda and Melissa, you go take that. Now I'm going to be doing these other things. And that's really a challenge because people are watching them, right? They are watching them. And surprisingly enough, you'll see leaders sign on the dotted line for technology and not adopt that technology. They'll say yes because they know the value that it's going to bring. So the story that comes to mind is an organization that was bringing a technology in. The leaders they could see the value for their organization, but they weren't using the technology at all. Or some of them were, but others weren't. And I talked to an employee who made that observation. She said, well, I see some utilizing this technology. I see others kind of just doing business as usual. And then I see others that are being very resistant to it. And I said, well, what does that cause you to do? I mean, in terms of behavior? And she said, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that gives us sort of that, that explanation. They are watching. And so it is not uncommon that there are investments made that people are not necessarily ready to put the time into, and they might be saying, well, I've got 28 other projects and, 4 of them are technologies. I see the value for the organization, but how about if you folks do that as opposed to, the leaders doing it? And that's where it's really critical that they walk the talk and continue to walk the talk. I don't care if there's 28 projects.
Okay, amazing. So I am going to have some clarifying questions there. So you mentioned that, they might have 28 projects, and I don't know if these are really the transformation projects or really the change projects. In my experience, when I look at the SMB customers, and again, enterprise customers may be slightly different. They may have slightly more refined change management department, but I don't know how many SMB customers are going to have. So can you provide any specific examples of these 28 change project that you had, so that, these guys get some sort of perspective? Okay, what is a change project? Do I have a change project right now in my organization? So can you provide any sort of examples?
I'll let Melissa take this, but I'll just quick chime in and say it could be 3 technologies. It could be a transformation change. It could be, it can be anything from, it can be bringing a new product in. I mean, it's a multitude of varied, important projects.
Okay, amazing. So Melissa, do you have anything to add there with respect to identifying the projects that are actually going to drive the change? So let's say if I look at my PMO organization or the project management organization, and I don't even know if I should be looking at my PMO organization as driver, for the change projects, or is it going to be more at the organizational level? So how am I identifying these projects in my organization that are going to be flagged as the change project? And then I need to dial either Amanda or Laura or Melissa to help me with these change projects. So,
Right.
So tell me, how to identify these change projects in the organization.
Yeah, so Laura mentioned that change is storytelling. So I'm going to start with a story. I walked into an organization and multiple projects. They had an ERP transformation going on. They had a SKU reduction going on. They had an organizational realignment going on where they were reducing and trying to synthesize the organizational lines so that decisions could be made more quickly between a VP and, say, a CEO. And as all of this is going on, I'm sitting down and talking to my client, and she's like, I really don't see the need for this. And I was, well, tell me why. Well, because granted, I haven't gone into your training and I haven't done anything that you've asked me to do, but the guy sitting next to me, all he does is complain about this. He complains about this project. He complains about testing. I just hear him complain all the time. And so that doesn't really make me want to get involved and doesn't make me think this is really positive. So when we step back and look at that leadership has to recognize that it's not just impacting directly the individuals that are in the project. It's this indirect influence of everyone in the organization. And as a result, that change group that you're talking about isn't just the individuals and the change networks and the end users and the stakeholders and the indirect stakeholders and the change management group and the PMO group, but it all comes to this voice that Laura mentioned, which we're going to call the front seat leader. That front seat leader is the one that stands out in the crowd that people are going to listen to. And if you don't have the right front seat leader, if you don't have the person that Laura and Amanda have mentioned that are using the right words and the right commentary and providing that right set of influence and saying, I'm a leader, I'm doing this, then change isn't going to happen at all.
Okay, amazing insights there. So Amanda, I'm going to ask this question slightly differently, and maybe you have a story now. I don't know, Amanda, since you were thinking, I'm pretty sure, because you're going to have tons and tons of stories.
I do.
So the question is going to be, let's say if I'm a CEO, right? Obviously, there are going to be a lot of different transformation projects, a lot of different change initiatives, and I don't even know where this whole change management fits into the organization. Is it going to be part of HR? Is it going to be part of my IT team? Is it going to be part of my executive suite? So define from the organizational structure where change management fits in, and how I, as a CEO or the CFO, can budget for you guys that you guys need to be involved with this project, because this is going to be slightly more transformational in nature, that, IT team should not be handling this directly, or the functional team should not be doing this directly. So how am I identifying the organizational structure, and how am I recognizing the projects inside my organization?
Okay. So, and I'm totally going to sound like a politician right now, but I'm going to say it depends. Okay.
That's the consulting answer, always.
Okay, I'm going to give two examples. So I am a CEO and I'm getting ready to launch an ERP implementation. That ERP implementation is being driven by the IT organization with the support of, let's just say, finance, right? They're partnering together. And therefore, because I have this discrete initiative going on where I know there's going to be a large amount of change, as a CEO, I might decide change management is within that project team to move that transformation forward. Okay, so that's one example. I have a discrete project that I know is going to require a lot of change management. It's going to have an impact on my people, therefore it's embedded into the team. Other example, I have large structural changes going on across the entire organization where I am now going to operate as one company. I'm going to have all the same goals and incentives, and I am going to have more centralized organizations versus decentralized organizations, okay? This is a company that I actually lived through, personal example here, but if that's the case where you're doing large kind of structural changes within the company and you know it's going to impact the entire culture of the entire company, it's going to impact all of your employees across the entire company, I have seen that actually then the change management gets put into HR. Okay, so it really depends on, is it discrete? Is it an initiative where I have a start and end time? And maybe then that change is embedded into the project. If this is going to be an ongoing kind of cultural revolution type of a thing, then you might want to consider putting it into your HR. So those are just two examples that I've lived through. And it really, like I'm going to go back to, it really depends on what are you trying to achieve as an organization and what are you working on that requires this type of focus on change.
Okay, amazing. So Laura, I'm actually going to move to you next, and maybe you can provide some more examples related to, let's say, if I have many different initiatives where my team is saying that maybe we should be engaging with the change management professionals because you are trying for these transformations and they are not really working for the company, or maybe people are not really buying the change. So that's how maybe the executives have figured out that, you know what, I probably need some professional help with respect to change management people, or maybe I need to hire a change management person, or maybe need to create a department inside my company, and that is going to have some sort of, change management flavor to it, along with the other functional leaders or the technical leaders. So let's say if you were to create this sort of, change framework inside the organization, how would you structure it from the organizational perspective?
Oh my gosh, here's the political response coming again, because it varies so much. Okay. And right now, and I think it's going to be transforming even more. I spoke with the head of a consulting firm that called me recently, and he said, do you have 250 change practitioners that you on your staff? And I'm like, no. And he said, I'd buy you tomorrow if you did. Because he said, I've got 450 open requisitions. So, I mean, these organizations are looking for professionals. And, to the point, some this distinction between project management and change management, that really, varies by organization. But I'm guessing that given the need and necessity right now, and actually shortage in resources, that people are going to be looking at this in every single example that you just described, outsourcing it, collaborating with other organizations and sharing a group of practitioners. I think it will vary tremendously. And I don't think there's a pat answer as to what makes it right or wrong. I think it really depends, on the organization entirely.
Okay, Melissa, so from your perspective, what have you seen, with respect to the overall, from the change organization perspective inside a company. Let's say if you're creating that and you are a consultant that is actually advising the CEO, and obviously your answer is going to be, it depends, and it depends upon the requirements. But maybe you can provide some examples that you have seen so that my listeners are going to get perspective.
Yes.
Okay, this is how I can approach. Maybe, if I'm a very, legacy organization, then I need to have very different approach to change management than, let's say, if I'm a startup, right? So the approach is going to be very different. So in your experience, what have you seen?
So let me answer that not with an approach, but maybe look at the roles and responsibilities. So, for example, if I work with a company that has not a lot of change culture, they don't have a huge change organization. Oftentimes, I'm lucky if there's one person that they actually designate as a change lead in that company. So when I come in on an initiative, I'm bringing a change lead to partner with them. I'm bringing a communications person to structure the communications plan, draft and write the communications, and then how to execute it. I've also got somebody physically working on the internal website and how to pull that change and make it sustainable. And then I've also got a fourth person who's focused on training. What's our training plan? How are we going to impact the end users? Are we going to train the trainer? What type of methodologies, do we use tools like WalkMe? There's so many. Change management is such a large initiative that it's so deflating when a company says we need to cut the budget, so all of change management's out. Like without change management, you have no return on investment, you have no user adoption, and everything that you've just spent money on, millions of dollars in these ERP transformations, you're just going to throw it out the door because you want to save a couple $100,000 and kick out the whole change management program. So I think you're hearing, we're all a huge advocate of change management and what that means for these initiatives. But it's really looking, if you can't do it internally, then it's okay to go and get that from the consulting firm or from Amanda or from Laura. Yeah, I knew that.
So some great points there, Melissa. Okay, go ahead, Laura, please.
Just a comment, coming back to the stories. I mean, one of the things that we found that's really helpful is, people will ask, how do we keep this message going? How do we keep it alive? Because people are going back to 250 emails and it's, the tasks at hand are overwhelming. And so just even remembering or keeping it top of mind is extremely difficult. And so what we do in that situation is we tell stories. We help share stories. And the most powerful stories are stories of their people. And the really most powerful ones are the ones that people that were very reluctant with that change. And they share that they were reluctant, because those that are reluctant relate a lot more to those that are reluctant than the ones that are out there with jazz hands, all excited about, that change solving world hunger, right? I mean, there's a lot of sort of eye rolling that goes on with the world hunger conversation. But those individuals that they feel like are peers that say, I didn't see the value of this and I was really resistant to it, but I put my toe in the water and I gave it a little try and then I got a little better and it worked and it helped me in this way. Those stories can be really powerful. And we love helping tell those stories. And in this day and age, we can get those stories to more people. We can get those out as a means by which to keep the conversation top of mind. And also the stories really spur conversation. And that's a critical part of the change process too, is that we keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, you have a comment or?
Oh, no. I was actually just thinking about what's the, someone mentioned earlier, what's the incentive for change? I was thinking, that was my thinking look. Yeah.
So, Melissa, I'm actually going to have a follow-up question, on one of the comments. So you mentioned that, when you walk to these initiatives, you have a communications person that you have to talk to. You have the change lead person. Sometimes it might be there. Sometimes it might not be there. So let's say if I want to know what is going to be a reporting structure of this change lead, who is the change lead reporting to? Are they reporting to the CEO directly? Are they reporting to the project management organization? Are they reporting to HR? Where does this person fit inside the organization? Who's paying for it?
Wow. Wow. That's, I think everybody, you saw everybody's look on their face. That is absolutely different in every single organization. But I will tell you, so I ran my own survey, because I'm a nerd and I have nothing better to do. I ran my own survey and I spoke to 25 chief procurement officers over a course of 5 years. I spoke to them at the beginning of their change and I spoke to them at the end of their change. Full end-to-end life cycle procurement transformation, business transformation. One of the things that was interesting is when it came to change management, a majority of them built a change management organization inside the procurement organization underneath the director of procurement systems or underneath the director of operations. And this allowed the chief procurement officer to own that change related to everything in procurement. It gave that individual control of their own anonymity and the ability to focus on true transformation change, again, looking at it from documentation, change, communications, et cetera. But I found that personal survey was quite interesting because, as you just mentioned, change is different, and the role of change in the person. I've seen it under PMO, as I've said, I've seen it under chief procurement officers. I've seen a different change person under human resources. I rarely see an actual true change management organization where you can have, this is my HR person, and this is my procurement person, and this is my, I just don't see that, where I don't think a lot of people take change that seriously.
Okay, Laura, sorry, you had a comment. Go ahead.
Just a comment. I love that. I love that example, Melissa. And I think, a lot of times there can be the us versus them, or, you come riding in on your horse and, do your change thing and then you leave. There can be a real value of really being a part of the team and really being in that particular area. So I think that's a great example where it makes a lot more sense to be under that umbrella and be a part of that kind of cultural universe that exists within the organization.
Okay, amazing insight. So Amanda, I'm actually going to move to you, and I am actually going to ask you one question. Typically, when you look at the change, one of the most challenging thing with respect to change management is always going to be this cross-functional aspect. In my experience, that's where the real hurdles are, because if you have the straightforward reporting structure where, let's say, if you are part of your CPO organization or procurement organization, and it is really your boss, who's instructing, hey, you are reporting to me, and this is what you are supposed to be doing, and I am managing inside the change inside my department. It's just easier. But typically, when you look at things like ERP implementation or the digital transformation implementation, now your reporting structures are going to be very different inside the organization. Okay, I am actually following the orders of my boss. This guy is following the orders of my boss, and that's where the conflict is going to be in the organization. So, in my experience, the change leader can really bring these cross-functional teams together and provide the real value. And in my experience, when we look at these transformations, the major roadblock for the transformation is always going to be this cross-functional challenge, because the way organizations are created, they are not designed or were born for change. So in your experience, let's say if you were trying to create an ideal change management organization, would you create a separate change organization? Would you keep it inside the HR? And I know you are probably going to say, it depends. But this is your ideal organization. You are the boss. You are the CEO.
So I'm the CEO. Okay, so what I would say is that I would like to have, if I were the CEO, depending on how large my organization was, but let's just say I'm mid to large, I would like to have a centralized change management organization that then gets deployed out to discrete initiatives. So for instance, I have a capability within my team that's like a center of excellence They know all of the latest trends. They know how what is now the latest and greatest in change management. They keep up with those capabilities, but then they're deployed out into the organization to help support discrete projects that are going on. So for instance, if it is a ERP implementation, or I'm buying a new company and I have M&A activity going on and I need to combine the cultures, or, you know, the list goes on and on and on that they could be deployed out to. But I like that kind of hybrid model where you have a center of excellence, where you have that capability. You can supplement that capability with additional advisors and consultants, but then deploy them out into the organization to support those programs.
Okay, so some amazing insights there. And I am personally a big fan of the Center of Excellence. And the reason why I am such a big fan is because of this siloed nature of the majority of the organization. And if you want to do any sort of transformation, it is probably going to be biased with one of the organizations, and typically the organization that actually has the most clout typically wins. Doesn't matter whether, you know, it is going to be in the best interest of the corporate entity or not, right? So when you look at the Center of Excellence, obviously the Center of Excellence needs to have a lot of different elements. It needs to have your functional leaders. It needs to, I don't know if PMO is going to be part of your center, Center of Excellence or not. So how is change management going to be related with all the other things that you are probably going to be needing inside your Center of Excellence? Amanda, you are on mute, sorry.
Was that to me? I thought that was going to go to Laura, but that's okay. I can come to me. So, and my earphones just died. So maybe it would be best for Laura to answer because I heard like half of the question. So
okay. So Laura, do you want to take this? I don't know whether you heard.
I'll give it to Melissa. I'll let Melissa take it. There she goes.
Kick this one around.
Okay, Melissa.
All right. So I love what Amanda said. In fact, the more she talks and the more you talk about a center of excellence, I'm looking at, just like the PMO organization, just like a sourcing center of excellence, every company should invest in that center of excellence for change management, because it is something that can be distributed across every initiative globally. Like, I feel like we're saying something and it's like this new concept, like, oh my God, the light bulb goes off. And then I'm sitting back going, why hasn't, organizations been doing this when they've done it for everything else? Why is project management so much more important than change management? I don't know. But to answer your question, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, so it is really going to be the relationship of the change management organization with the other pieces of Center of Excellence.
Yeah.
So typically the Center of Excellence organization is created for a purpose because you don't have that central insight or decision making available inside the organization, because each of the divisions of your company are going to make their own decisions. They are going to have their own budgets. So that's why you create Center of Excellence, that you need a central authority, which is going to be representative of your CEO. Typically in the smaller organization, you are going to have a CEO who is probably going to be doing everything. But then you need these bodies who are going to be representing the CEO. But then you need to figure out what all do you need there, and which are going to be the entities that are going to be important. So I know that PMO is part of probably the Center of Excellence. Now you guys are recommending that. I definitely need to invest in change. So what all do I need to have as part of my Center of Excellence organization, and so what is going to be the relationship of all of those?
Yeah, so at minimum, there needs to be at least one person that can outline what that strategy and plan looks like. And that way, once they have a standard strategy and plan, in theory, that should be able to be at least 90% picked up and moved across to any other initiative and any other, organization, whether it's technical, whether it's HR, procurement, finance, et cetera. Then when you have that, then you definitely need an individual or a group of people to really focus on the documentation, looking at the, as these initiatives grow or as they continue to move forward, someone that can really take the impact of that change. What's stopping, what's starting? What impact is that change going to have, and then be able to interpret that in documentation that can be turned around for training. So if I was building my own company, because, just like Amanda, I'm going to be the CEO today. So if I'm the CEO of my company and I have some now disposable discretionary income that's come in and I really want to grow, then I would say at minimum, I need these 2 people to get me started.
Can
Yeah.
I add,
Go ahead, please.
Can I add to that now that I understand the question too? So that's good. So we typically, I love the point of someone that's leading the strategy or has that broader perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of heavy lifting that you need to do in your strategic planning and around the change itself. So, for instance, your stakeholder analysis, your risk assessments, your change logs, all of that kind of framework stuff. You would want to have that capability in the team. Now, one other thing, I look at it also as almost like an internal marketing organization, because you are doing different things to get someone to buy your product, right? That's ultimately what you're doing. So we also look at, do we have creatives on the team? So people who can do video, people who can do websites, people who can do infographics. So that kind of capability. Now, you might not want to have it in your team. You want to have that capability accessible to your team. So whether it's another person internally or a third party that you can bring in, I think that goes to, like, we have to be creative about how we communicate, because I'm so passionate about that change management is not a training plan. It's not a communication plan. Those are aspects of change, but we need to learn how to truly engage that individual to inspire them to buy our product. So let's learn from our marketing people and do that more effectively.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Melissa. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So I get everything you're saying. I'm thinking about it from cost, which let me explain. So anytime I'm on a project and I'm looking at staffing for change management, and the customer tells me I don't have a lot of money, we give them a change management strategy and planning person, a very senior individual, for 8 to 10 weeks just to build it out, and then we roll them off, and then we bring in a lower cost resource to execute. So I think if I was the CEO building this group, it would be a lot easier, I agree, to have that strategy and planning individual as part of that CMO or that change management organization, partnering with your marketing folks, which hopefully the marketing team's already been built up before the Center of Excellence. But then it's a lot easier to go, and a lot cheaper on my budget, to go and outsource the lower level staff who's just going to execute it. And I think that's kind of where the whole training communications plan came in. Yeah. But yeah, all right, good. I had to explain it to Amanda, so.
Sorry, Laura, you had a comment?
Well, I would say, also outsourcing those creatives, bring them in when you need them, but you would likely not need them all of the time. But you really want to have these resources in your back pocket, and to play all of those roles, because it is critical to be able to tell the story well, be able to show the value of it. One of the things that I think is, happens is that people get so drawn into the value of what, and they've been making a decision about that change for so long, they just assume that this is going to be one of those unique ones. It's just going to go just like magic. And so I think that a part of telling that story is also reminding people of what happens when you don't have it. What happens? What is the cost of not having these resources and not having these strategists and having those higher level practitioners, and then maybe executing with, with individuals that are not at that higher level of expertise, but can follow that plan really well.
Mm-hmm. So Laura, just to add on to that a little bit. Okay, sorry, I just froze a little bit too. So what I was just thinking about with the Center of Excellence approach too is that you can, one of the major questions that I always ask right at the beginning about the story that we're trying to tell is, how does this fit into the bigger picture? Right? How does this fit into the company's overall strategy? How does it fit into maybe procurement's overall strategy, or whatever area of the organization that you're in? Because there's so much change going on in these organizations typically that people feel one-offed all the time. And it's really hard when you're sitting in the seat of an end user, let's just say, to connect all of those dots at the beginnings or at the top of the story. So having this kind of center of excellence would be highly beneficial to be able to create that comprehensive story for these initiatives and have that perspective.
Go ahead,
and I'd love to take on that again, is that's where it's really critical to, to understand when people aren't talking, what are they thinking, right? And if they're thinking, oh my gosh, here comes another, or, whatever they're thinking, address that. Address that. And you might be thinking right now, or you may, you may be thinking, gosh, this is one too many. I've got, I'm like at the top of my, priority list. There's only a possibility of having so many priorities. I think you've got to own that reality and speak to it, and then come back and say, here's how this relates to that bigger picture. And that story needs to be talked about a lot and shared a lot.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa. You had a comment.
Yeah, I'm going to tie back to something Amanda said really early on, that you've done this well, you've done this not well, you've learned along the way. One of the best things I've ever had someone ask me to do was, can you just spend 2 weeks doing a listening tour? And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, I just want you to go around and listen to people complain. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And that's going back to what Laura's saying. I don't know what everybody's thinking. They didn't know what everybody's thinking, but I came in and I was perceived as a neutral party, and I had people complaining. And the best part of the story was the very last person. I'm walking into this really nice, pretty boardroom. There's a woman there, there's a man there, and he's complaining about having to doing something in the ERP that was $7.97, and I was like, wow, okay. So help me understand, where's your role in the organization? Oh, I'm the CEO. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting here with the CEO of this organization who's complaining to me about something that's $7.97 that's happening in the ERP. And it was fantastic. It's the best experience I've ever had. But I would absolutely recommend that a listening tour. Listen to what everybody's saying. Give them the opportunity to voice their concerns, because chances are we've never given them that opportunity before. And that's like my huge lesson learned. I love that story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, guys. So, Melissa, I'm actually going to have some follow-up questions for you related to some of the comments that you made, about the whole strategy aspect. And that I like to act as the CFO on this forum, and I am always looking for the person who's actually going to pay for it. Okay, as long as I'm not paying for it, I'm cool. Okay, so you agreed that you are actually going to pay for the change manager. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so you said that for the strategy, I'm actually going to have the expensive resource for 8 to 10 weeks, and for the execution, you are going to have cheaper resource, right? So let's say if I have never seen a strategy plan related to change management. So if I hire this person who's going to come here, going to do the strategy planning for 8 to 10 weeks. So what am I looking at when I get the output of that exercise? What am I looking at in the plan?
So, and I'm sure everyone here can chime in if I've missed something, but primarily it's understanding right away who's the right leader and coaching them and making sure they're the right leader and they have the right messaging. It's understanding what the criteria for success is, because if you don't know what success is supposed to look like at the end, then you have no plan. You have nothing to gauge against. It's making sure you've got a baseline of metrics, because in order for me to have true change management and user adoption, I have to be able to measure the change. So we'll outline what that criteria looks like, how we're going to measure change, and how we're going to get you to success. Then it goes back to the messaging. What's important? What's the messaging that's specific to help convince and influence everybody that we're going to be talking to, and understanding all their roles. So doing that stakeholder analysis, finding out who are the different roles and what's important to them. So you as the CFO, you're one of my stakeholders, but what you think is success and critical for this project and what you need out of it is going to be different than Laura, who's my chief procurement officer, who's going to be different than Amanda, who's my chief technology officer. So it's really looking at those roles. And we talked earlier about the user journey, what's important to each of you as that user. From there, we go into more of a deep dive, which, from Amanda's perspective is really all the tactical components of it. But typically that's what that training person, that strategy person is pulling all of that out, getting leadership involved, helping coaching what the messaging is for the leadership, making sure we've got alignment so that everybody's saying the same thing.
Okay, amazing, guys. Do you guys have any follow-up comments on that by any chance, Amanda?
I actually have a story to tell. So Melissa hit that just nail on the head. That was amazing, and it brought up a story that I recently had with a potential customer, and we gave them a proposal. And of course, you come back with, well, we don't have that much money. We need to cut it down. And so what they were proposing was, I just want you to do the tactical work of creating communications and creating training. And I was like, well, okay, so. Of course, I start asking a whole bunch of questions like, what does that mean? So my first question was, who's going to create the story? Who's going to tell us what are the critical points that we need to communicate? Who's going to tell us what those key changes are? Who's going to tell us what are those sacred things within an organization that shall not be changed? What does that look like? Because if you can ask me all day long to engage me on communication, but I'm not going to be able to communicate anything, truly communicate anything, unless somebody is doing that work. So and that's where I go back to my comment about it's more than just communication and training. You have to have that aspect. You have to listen to the organization, do those tours, ask all the questions up front, understand how it aligns to the broader picture, but then develop your stories so that you know what to communicate and what's going to resonate within the organization.
Okay, amazing, guys. So that's it. For today, we are close to our time. So the only thing we can take right now is going to be the closing advice. So Melissa, I'm actually going to start with you. What is your closing advice for today? You're on mute, Melissa.
It's always hard to be the first one. I think I'm really going to echo some of the things I heard today, that transformation can't happen without change. And I really like what Laura, I'm going to take Laura's quote earlier, understanding what's the impact of not doing change management. I think that's a huge critical takeaway.
Okay, amazing. And Laura, what is your closing advice?
I would say that if you're not utilizing the power of story to influence behavior, that's critical. And the next thing is know where you are starting and who you are starting with, because early momentum is critical. And if you are just selecting people to begin the process randomly out of the organization, you're likely going to be bringing people in that are going to hurt you a lot more than they are going to help you. And early momentum is critical.
Okay, amazing. Love it. Amanda, what is your closing advice?
So, and I'm going to mention this, Sam, because a lot of your listeners, I believe, are focused on ERP and digital transformation. So technology without people is just a hammer laying on the floor. Right? It's not going to be used appropriately. So so many deployments in ERP and digital transformation focus so much on the technology and they totally forget about your people. So don't forget about your people.
Okay, love it. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. And if you joined for the first time, this was part of our digital transformation series. We bring one topic each Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So don't miss next week's show. On that note, guys, I really want to thank you for your time and for coming here.
This is great. Bye, guys.
Good to see you. Bye now.
Bye.